Professor Li, good to see you.
Nice meeting you too, yeah.
So you were at the opening ceremony hearing Chinese Premier talking about China's GDP growth will be at least 5%.
5%,
yes. Well, there's a lot of debate about where China's economy is going and how much confidence there from your perspective.
Like the first quarter GDP growth at 5.3%. We see exports growth has turned from negative to positive, and manufacturing investments are really impressive, 9.5%. The Chinese economy is coming out of the COVID and starting this expansion stage again. Looking forward, I think we face challenges. Every country faces challenges in today's global environment, but China still have a lot of potential policy potentials. Policy tools can be used. For example, if you look at the leverage ratio, I just give a session on debt and growth. Chinese government has the lowest leverage ratio among all the major economies, which means the government has potential to raise central government debt to help stimulate the private economy. And also you look at the manufacturing advancement in China, the exports, EVs and solars. So China is coming a long way in terms of manufacturing. Consumption growth has been steady in the first quarter. The third plenary meetings in July, so people have high expectations of new policies, new initiatives to support the economy.
Today in the Chinese Premier's speech, he also emphasized on the importance of market and the importance of enterprises.
Yes.
Of course, he's been repeating that message in several important occasions.
Right.
Having said that, though, how do you observe the latest trends of Chinese companies going overseas? Right. Or shall I say, Chinese companies which are already becoming global now are making more efforts going overseas?
Right. I think there are some Chinese companies that have become global companies, and the other companies are in the process. Like I said, because of the COVID situation, because of some of the headwinds in domestic Chinese economy, more and more companies are looking for external markets. For example, like the exports, the new three items, right? EV, battery, solar. They are becoming really a force in the global economy, and everybody feels the advancement in Chinese manufacturing capability. In the consumer sector, right? You see TikTok, Pinduoduo, Temu, Tian. These are really amazing Chinese companies that are taking advantage of the e-commerce business model in China and applying them overseas. So from these trends, you see nowadays the export of Chinese is not just low-level cheap goods, but high-level manufacturing goods and high-level consumer, platforms, business models. So I think the trend is for Chinese companies, your goal is to become a global company, because even though we have 1.4 billion people, there are 7 billion people worldwide, and they have different levels of economic developments. Some are like in the advanced economies, US and Europe, but some other economies like Southeast Asia, RCEP, Africa, Middle East, they are like 20 years ago Chinese economy. So that gives Chinese companies another opportunity to apply what they have learned, they have done in China to this overseas market. And also, I think we need to emphasize that the dual circulation model given by the Chinese government, because China internally has still plenty room for growth. Our GDP per capita is only $12,000. There's still big difference between coastal cities, interior cities. So I think the model is dual circulation. You go abroad, you compete, you become really capable companies, and then you take this abilities, take this expertise coming back to China, to take advantage of the domestic growth opportunity.
But of course, there are complexities, Professor, as you may be well aware. There are headwinds, for example, even in the sector of electronic vehicles, which everybody is talking about today, about tariffs, about indigenous innovation, about and the list goes on. So how do you see these headwinds, particularly to some of the areas which you illustrate as the most promising?
Yes. For example, Janet Yellen came to China a couple months ago, and her main message is, Chinese overcapacity. But if you look at it globally, human race as a unit, there's no overcapacity in solar power. We are lack of capacity. But because of this zero-sum game thinking, right? So there's this tariff, there's trade wars, there's sanctions. I have looked at the Chinese overseas, this overseas market. Obviously, Europe, America, we're going to face stiffer sanctions, tariffs. But there's if you look at the data, there's a middle power. Middle power means countries that are not as large as America, as Britain, like Brazil, like RCEP countries, like Spain, like Turkey. We call it middle power countries. These middle power countries, their economy size is quite big, $30 trillion US. So there are a lot of rooms for Chinese companies, not necessarily going to these, countries that are have stronger, stricter, import restrictions. But there are plenty of room where you can play the market.
The other thing is the role of the government, right? Today, the Chinese premier suggested again that the role of government is to create a good environment for businesses to thrive. Now, there has been a lot of discussion about what the role is in terms of dealing with the overcapacity issue, quote unquote, that China is being faced with in terms of rhetorics coming from others. So what do you think the interactions between business community and governments, especially local governments, GDP growth rate is still one of the key KPI of theirs?
I think government and the private business each have their own roles. Government, for example, in Chinese, for Chinese economy, the government has done a great job in building infrastructure, right, in creating these necessary environments for private enterprises to thrive. But after that, I think government, it's better to let the market play a bigger role in terms of resource allocation. For example, our EVs, our solar industries, they were created by government initiative, right? Government spent resources, incentive structures to help this industry to get started. But I think afterwards, BYD, CATL, they are private enterprises. They work on economic principles, right? So I think they both have roles to play. But having said that, I think it's really important to realize for China, domestic consumption is very important, right? So China is right now it's more like it's more like a manufacturing country because we manufacture, we export, but we need to increase domestic consumption, increase the domestic market. That will help to solve the overcapacity issue. But again, the overcapacity, how you define it, right? So is it just for China or for global? But again, for overseas, definitely we're going to face headwinds because of all these rhetorics. So the question is, how do you go to different countries mutually beneficial? I think that's important. I go to countries where they welcome you, like GCC, like RCEP, like Africa, like Brazil, South America, like Turkey. There are all these countries. They love to have China's model to develop manufacturing base, to build infrastructures. So that's as a matter of how do you find the soil that welcome you.
The Chinese premier also quoted a phrase that's becoming really popular these days in the Chinese society. It's called 内转.
内转, yeah,
Chinese, of course, there are different interpretations of exactly what it means because it's a recently invented phrase by the general public online. Whether it means very competitive or over competitive, or it means people cannot concentrate on the real issue, but rather have to focus on the procedures. These are up to interpretation. But this is an interesting phenomenon. For your students, you're a professor of entrepreneurs. How are they looking at this issue both within China and they see this phenomenon worldwide?
I think it's more severe in China. again, if you look at Chinese economy, just the rough numbers, consumption accounts for maybe 30% of GDP, but the investment, fixed asset investment account for maybe 50%. So in that sense, it's a manufacturing economy because consumption is relative low, investment, manufacturing relative heavy, right? So if you don't have, if you focus on domestic market, you don't have, if your exports are being restricted, you definitely see too much internal competition. That is definitely true. But having said that, but there are companies, they feel less of this pressure. The innovative ones, the ones that are adapting the newest technology, they are at the cutting edge. Their products are can be differentiated from other products, so they feel less of this internal excessive competition, right? So it's a matter of there's a systematic issue of how do we balance the Chinese economy, improve the internal consumption, but at the same time, there's also another issue: how do you make your company more innovative, more standing out, so that you wouldn't be facing this unnecessary competition?
I noticed, Professor, you have been doing years of research about the transition going on in the Chinese business world.
Right.
As you noted earlier, 80% of Chinese private businesses are actually family-owned businesses.
Yes.
That's a huge number.
Right.
And we are seeing the second generation after China's reform and opening up now taking over the tasks from their earlier generation.
Yes.
So this is a dramatic transition.
Yes.
And this generation is so different from the earlier ones.
Yes.
So how would you characterize this transformation we're seeing?
Right.
What are some of the realities you are looking at?
Right. The environment is totally different from the environment when the founders started their companies. Now the second generation has to take up the company in this dramatically different, challenging environment. So first of all, succession is hard. Okay, we have this saying in China: wealth doesn't last beyond 3 generations. This saying you can find in almost any countries. Shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. Succession is hard because the founders are really great people, right? Because they have made it. They are the survivors.
Yeah, they make things happen.
Yeah, they make things happen. But for the second generation to be as successful as their parents is very challenging. It's not like they're not as smart, but it's just like so it's challenging. Now what I see, the trend is that the second generation, most of the Chinese second generations, they receive well education. They're well educated. They go to the best schools in China, in America, and the challenge they face is whether I say this: are you willing? Are you able? Are you ready? Are you willing to take over the family business? A lot of them may not be willing, right? Because
they might have other dreams.
They have other dreams, and they look at their parents. They work so hard, and I don't want to be like that. And they are so successful. Right. It's most likely I'm not going to be as good as them. Are you willing? Most may not be. Some of them may not be willing. Are you able? Can you run the company? Right. Because a lot of doing business in China require a lot of local experiences. You need to deal with all kinds of issues, which Western education does not give you, right? So that's another challenge they face. And then are you ready? When you're going to be ready? So and especially, again, in today's environment, a lot of the old business model may not work, right? So that's the challenge. So I see different kinds of trends. There are some people. There's a small group of second generation. They really just take over the company. They just follow their parents' steps, and they are doing great. There are another group of people. They are innovative. I'm doing something totally different. I'm going to start a new business because I have new ideas, and they can be successful as well. I see some examples based on families' support. They're going to go into a very different industry. Of course, it's not just completely random. They have some, connections, some preparations, and that's also very good because you want to have new alternatives, right? Then there's some others say, I'm not going to be in this game. That may not be a bad choice either, because if you're not into it, if you're not suitable for it, maybe it's better to let professional managers to manage your company.